Good afternoon. My name is Irene Johnson, and this is
Stephanie Diamond.
And we are here with Collier County Public Library, and we're going to be discussing the book, The Senator's Wife, today. This was our book that we chose for this month. We're going to go over it. Just so you know, spoilers are included. So right now, if you don't want to hear spoilers, tune us out, because we are going to talk about all the dirt in this book.
We have to.
It is a thriller. It's a book that is interesting to a point. We will get there. Let's talk about the author a little bit.
So Liv Constantine is actually two people. It's two sisters. It's Lynn and Valerie Constantine, and Liv Constantine is their pen name. And this is their sixth book. You might have heard their name. They were on Reese Witherspoon's book club selection for The Last Mrs. Parrish. So that was their really big book that put them on the map. So we decided we would read one of their books for the first time, and here we are.
So we're going to start with question one. So this is how I like to start all of my book discussions, because it kind of gives an overview of how do you feel about the book. Sure. So I'm going to ask you, okay? On a Goodreads scale of 1 to 5 stars, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, what rating would you give The Senator's Wife, and what is your reason for that rating?
I give it a 2 stars. I really do. I feel like the genre of, murder, thriller, mystery is supposed to obviously be thrilling, and I did not feel any thrills within this book. And honestly, I thought the idea for this book was really clever and super exciting. I just felt like the execution for it was terrible. The characters were super undeveloped. There was no real substance to grab onto, and everything fell super flat for me when reading this book. So yeah, I'd say it was a 2.
On a Goodreads rating of 1 to 5, I'm going to give it a 2, 2.5 as well.
That's nicer than me.
They call it a thriller for a reason. No thrills, no excitement. I knew what was going on in the book before, and I kept expecting more because there was a lot of filler. So I'm like, when are we going to get to the point of the book where it gets exciting? And it really did, maybe in the last 15 pages.
But that's like any thriller. You get that at the end.
Right.
You hope that at least the last 15 pages, when everything's being revealed to you, that you're excited. But they just didn't keep that tempo up throughout the entire book. So it really was just...
It was a book that I personally wouldn't recommend.
No.
Because it was just one of those books that it fell flat for me as well.
Yeah.
And, I like to read a lot, and when you give me a thriller, I'm expecting something. And I didn't get any of those vibes at all.
Yeah.
We're going to go on to question number 2.
Let's do it.
And I'll have you go ahead and start.
Okay. So The Senator's Wife opens with a scene of Sloane, Robert, Whit, and Peg that quickly delves into chaos, uncertainty, and the death of Robert and Peg. So why do you think the author chose to start at this point in the story and then jump ahead 2 years?
So this was one of the most exciting parts of the book.
Yes.
So at the very beginning of the book, you have these 2 couples. They're on vacation together. Both are senators, and they have their wives with them.
Sure.
And Robert is married to Sloane at the time, and Peg is married to Whit, and then all of a sudden, chaos happens. Peg's accusing Whit of being an adulterer, and it turns into a mess. And they both end up dead, Robert and Peg. And that's kind of like, whoa, what just happened? Why did this happen? And it leaves you very unsettled of, was it suspicious? Was it an accident? What happened?
Yes.
And then it moves you forward 2 years. I think she didn't know how to do a flashback to that memory, because it could have been handled that way.
Yeah.
I think they wanted to start with a wow.
Absolutely.
So I do think that's why they did it, but it's very abrupt.
It is.
I don't think there was a good transition there.
Yeah, but I think that was a tactic. I think that's something you really want. You want that stark, wow, the contrast between the two.
Yes.
It really does startle you. So I definitely think that was on purpose. And
Yes.
I definitely feel the beginning part really hooks you in with that murder, and also you get a little bit of pieces of Robert and Sloane as a couple before he actually dies, which I feel like is probably the only thing you actually figure out about Sloane throughout this entire book, is that she loves her husband Robert, who is dead now. But
Yes.
I just feel like that was really important, and then you also get to see Whit and Peg really be just this terrible, horrible couple together. And I think that is so important, especially as you continue reading, as to how does this compare to Sloane and Whit's relationship now?
Right.
What are the similarities between his past marriage, her past marriage and like what she thinks about all of this and how she's constantly comparing him to Robert. So I think that, you know, that was definitely, I think that first scene I probably think was one of the best scenes actually.
Absolutely.
In the whole book. So it really hooks you. And then when you go on to that 2 years later and you see that she's married to Whit, it's crazy. You're just kind of really thrown out of it. Like, you feel like you've just been like tossed and turned and like thrown somewhere because, oh my gosh, I remember just thinking, I'm like, this is out of character. I'm like, this woman would never marry this man. I'm like, this is wrong. And it's just, oh.
Well, it's a big leap.
Yeah,
the 2-year jump was like,
Yeah.
whoa, here we are, 2 years. It's only been 2 years, and she loved this man,
Yeah.
Robert, with
Oh my
every
gosh.
pore of her.
The only thing
And
you
then
know.
she married his best friend, who was part
terrible.
who was part of the suspicious murder
Yes.
in the first chapter. So you're kind of like, what is going on? So I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I didn't love the book, was it was kind of a far stretch in the very beginning to even swallow.
Oh, you
So-
get conned. I felt conned.
Fair, I get it. Question number 3. Let's discuss the characters. So we started.
Ugh.
Who is your favorite? Who is your least favorite? One you related to. I'm going to start with my favorite.
Go ahead.
So to be honest, my favorite character in the book was probably, who really had some character, was probably the best friend, and it would have been her mother-in-law, which was Rosemary. I liked her in the book. I felt like she was most developed.
Okay.
She was the mother-in-law. She had some realistic things, like, for example, you know, she loved Sloane because she was the best friend of her daughter all these years. So
Yeah.
it was like the daughter in her life, her second
That was her
daughter.
mother-in-law originally when she
And
was married to Robert.
And she was her mother-in-law. And she
Yeah.
had that relationship. And then
Sure.
all of a sudden, he dies. And Whit's there when he dies. And it's kind of suspicious. And she thinks it's suspicious.
Yeah.
And she marries the man that potentially killed
Yes.
her
Yes.
son.
Rosemary's the only one that knows what's going on. in this
Yes.
entire thing.
And she's and the fact that she feels suspicious of Whit from the very beginning, to me, is like realistic, because I'd have been suspicious of Whit in the
Fair.
very beginning.
So fair. I mean, I totally agree with you. Rosemary probably is the only one that has any form of like development. We get actual substance from her.
Yep.
Every other, even Sloane, who is literally this entire book. Well, it's called The Senator's Wife, but really, this whole entire book, it is about her, and obviously Whit,
Yes.
but mainly about Sloane. And you really, oh gosh, you really like, you see that there's not much that you learn from her in this entire book, and it's kind of sad. You're like, I have read what, 300 pages of this, and I get nothing from this woman besides I know that you love your dead husband more than anything, which just makes me think, why did you marry this terrible man in the first place?
Well,
That's all there is.
and she's really kind of a bump on a pickle. I mean, she doesn't really have a lot of character development or anything.
No.
And she's the main character, and you're sitting there and you're like, you know that she loves her daughter
Sure.
and her husband.
Sure.
And she's smart.
Yes.
I got that out of
Yes.
the novel. She's
Yes.
very smart. She's very
Absolutely.
intelligent. She like manages
She manages a foundation.
a foundation.
Like a nonprofit.
So
kind of,
there
yeah.
is some, but she's definitely not my favorite character.
No.
Who do I hate in the book? Whit.
We hate Whit. We all hate
But you
Whit.
hate
You
Whit from the
We
very
all hate
beginning,
Whit.
right? He's definitely the least favorite character.
Yeah.
And in that, I would say they did good character development, because you really don't like him.
You don't. You never like him. You never trust him. They never give you one reason to trust him.
In the beginning of the book, when Peg and him are having their fight in the very beginning, and it
Yes.
results in her dying,
Yes.
it's all about him being an adulterer
Yeah.
and cheating on him with this lady named Madeline. So she's the other one I hate in the book.
Oh.
So Madeline is somebody that pays into his senator career. She's kind of like one of the...
She's married
Yes.
to a senator who has a lot of power.
Yes.
And then she uses that, power through her marriage to get what she wants. And it's just...
And the whole time she's trying to basically have an affair with the senator.
with Whit, while they're both married.
Yes.
And she's still... It's just...
It's very, but you really dislike her too. They do a good
Yeah.
job with making you dislike
You do.
both those characters.
You know what? That's probably the most visceral feeling that I felt, was actually how much I disliked Madeline in this
Yes,
book.
because she was, one that I related to. That's a tough one. The only thing that I can kind of relate with is like when Athena is the home health care,
Mhm.
and you see Sloane basically getting to the point where everything is really her body is giving out on her.
Yeah.
Her mind is giving out on
Yeah,
her.
well, she's been poisoned. So.
And that feeling of not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
I watched my mom go through that with dementia, so I can relate to that piece of the character.
Sure.
Because it is frightening to wake up and be like, I don't even know what happened. I don't know what is happening. So that part is about the only thing that I could really relate to, and that was a
I have
stretch.
to say, and that's even a scene. That's
Yep.
not even necessarily like a real like character trait that you see yourself in. So
Absolutely not.
yeah, it was hard to feel really connected to any of these characters, honestly. So
All right, you got question number 4.
okay. The author chose to use various points of view from multiple characters to narrate the story. What was the experience of this narration like for you as a reader?
I was not fond of it. It did allow you to get through the plot of the story, if you want to say it that way. So the way she did it was interesting, but I almost felt like one sister wrote one and one sister wrote another, and they weren't there was
same.
not really good transitions between the, like, now Whit is talking, now Sloane's talking, now Rosemary's talking, and it just was it wasn't enough of a differentiation within the characters in their voice for it to really feel like it was a point of view writing.
Yeah, no, and I think that multiple point of views, sometimes when authors write them well, are amazing.
Absolutely.
When they're written well, there is nothing I love more than good multiple point of views. But this one, to me, just fell short in so many aspects, mainly because I feel like they were lying for half of them. So you're almost like, I love a good unreliable narrator as much as the next girl. Okay?
Absolutely.
But you can't just pick and choose which ones to be unreliable with and which ones to not be reliable. Unless if it's one narrator and you're bouncing through each character, you have to have some ability to be like, this is accurate.
Right.
And for Whit's narration, his whole point of view, all of it was fake.
Yes.
Until literally
The very end.
the moment we all knew what was happening, and then he decided, oh, I'm going to say everything that's actually happening and what's real. But we saw from Sloane's point of view, it was real. From Athena's, yes, she did seem suspicious, but at least we got her train of thought.
Right.
Which was never actually accurate.
Ever.
So I feel like that was not well done. And honestly, I feel a little conned by the authors. And I feel like that's part of why when you're a good writer and you can write a good story, you are able to weave those narrations and hide things within the storyline and say what you need to say and for it to be a good mystery.
Right.
And I feel like they just had to full-blown lie to get away with anything. So I really did not.
It was a bit of
appreciate
it was
that.
a stretch with the point
Yeah.
of views at times for you to sit there and say, I know where you're trying to go, but
Sure,
it wasn't
but-
comfortable at all
No.
in your writing. Question number 5, this one's kind of a long question, but it really delves into Athena. The character of Athena is introduced to the reader from the very beginning as someone representing themselves under a false identity. She's basically the care worker that's hired to take care of Sloane. She
Yeah.
has a surgery, she has lupus, and so lupus can be very debilitating.
Absolutely.
And so she's basically called upon to be her caregiver. And when she's doing her point of view writing, she says, they'll never know I haven't worked for a charity before. So
Yes.
right there, you know she's lying. So you know she's a liar
But at
in
least
her
that's
book.
an honest
Yep.
guy. Like, we get that train of thought. So you have those initial suspicions where she never did that for Whit.
Nope.
You know? But for Athena, absolutely. They do that on purpose. They want to create that, okay, there's something going on with this girl. We want to know what's happening. What
Right.
are your thoughts?
What impression did that leave you with in the beginning, and at what point did your suspicions change?
I think that because of the way that the authors wrote this, I never was actually really worried about Athena, which sounds terrible, but I think that because of such the heavy foot that they put on this person is weird and suspicious and we should watch her, I never was actually worried that she was going to end up being
She
a
was
bad
almost
person.
too obvious of a
Yeah.
scapegoat
Yeah,
for the whole
exactly,
thing.
exactly.
And she wasn't there in the beginning when the two died.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you play into this unless you're just a money grubber?
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
with Athena, the part that was interesting to me is later on we find out she's FBI,
Yes.
which cracks me up because I'm talking to Stephanie on the phone and we're discussing the book and she hasn't finished it yet. And she's going to me, she goes, I know this lady's like some kind of police
She's an
officer.
agent.
She's an agent
I was
for
like, she's
sure.
an agent.
And I'm laughing to myself because I'm like, she already knows the answer to the end of the book.
That you.
I personally knew, I didn't get it until they told me. I didn't know she was an agent. I really thought she was a con girl and she had like a sidekick going on when she was making those phone calls,
Sure.
and that she really was not a good person. So
Okay.
I did get kind of snowed a little bit by that,
Okay.
but I also thought she was after Whit.
I mean, let's be honest. The authors did a good job of like playing into that and giving
Yes.
you that like possibility of that being a thing. So that, I mean, that's fair. It's fair.
But it was very obvious. It was a
Yeah.
very obvious
That's
scapegoat.
what I mean. You knew, you were like, okay, these two are both playing a game, but what that game is, I don't know.
Right, what is it?
Or at least, you know, you weren't supposed to know, but.
All right, Steph, you got question number 6.
Alrighty. Okay. How did the side characters of Doris, Rosemary, and Madeline impact your read of the story?
So I'm going to start with the first character, which is Sloane's housekeeper. If you're going to like somebody in this book, you're going to like her. She's loyal,
Doris.
and she is, well, loyal to a fault. I mean, if you were
Yes.
going to pick her out, that's really what she was. She
Yes.
was caring and loyal to
Kind.
Sloane.
Yes.
And I think what she did was made you dislike Whit more
Mhm.
and dislike Athena more, because they basically, Athena gets Doris fired.
Yes.
And you think, well, why would she have done that as an FBI agent looking back? But she did it because Doris was being snoopy,
Yeah.
and she was figuring out that something was
Yes.
not right. So she got her fired on purpose because she was afraid that she was going to become.
The whole investigation and
Yes.
everything was going to be for naught, which is totally fair. But obviously, from our perspective, you don't know that. And you're like, well, that's kind of weird that
Yes.
she got her fired. So yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So it was like, okay, why? Rosemary, we discussed
Yes.
a little bit. Rosemary was one of my favorite characters in the book.
Mhm.
She was the mother-in-law,
Mhm.
and she's the one that had the suspicious about the death. So she's the one that kind of fights to have it come to conclusion. She actually
Yeah.
hires an investigator,
Yeah.
Mac,
Mhm.
to go out and investigate what's going on. And when the report comes back and it's shady, they basically kill Mac
Yeah.
and they try to kill Rosemary.
Right.
And to be honest, that wasn't very surprising to me either.
No, but you know what? We all love a good, like, we have to somebody who plays
Whodunit.
detective
Yep.
in a good mystery story, and she like picked up that role, and like granted, obviously she was a novice and like, she had to hire somebody or something like that, but like it was nice to see somebody who actually thought something was suspicious, whereas everybody else was like, it's fine, everything's fine, which doesn't make any sense.
No, 2 years
So-
when you married this man, it was very suspicious
I
from
was
the
like,
beginning.
this is weird. I can't believe none of you think this is weird except for one person.
Yes. And then you've got Madeline, who we talked about, who's just a terrible
You
person.
just hate her. And she's another reason why you were like, the fact that Whit was even involved with this woman in any way, shape, or form was like, it's him.
Yep.
It has to be.
You're shady for sure.
There's no one else.
So this is our final one. This is the major spoiler, so get ready.
I mean-
Question 7. Discuss the ending of the novel. Were you surprised by the final twist, and which twist shocked you the most?
No, I wasn't surprised. Whit was rotten from the beginning. Literally, it's not even called Sloane's book. It's the senator's wife. It's literally Whit's wife. Like,
Yes.
the title is about him. Everything it's all about
Him.
And I just feel like him being the killer and the one who wants it all because he's super greedy makes
Super greedy.
total sense. And also, at the end, you really do figure out by the time you get closer to the end of the story that his narration is wrong. Like, you're like, his is the only one that is not fully and completely honest.
It's like a narration of a sociopath.
Yes.
Of somebody who has no feeling
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And especially once you really put those pieces together, you're like, yeah, I need him to be completely rewritten, and I want like his entire actual confession, because like nothing that we had been given from him is actually real. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't shocked. I think that I knew it was gonna be him, and I really did think Athena was an agent at the end. So when that final part when she closes the door and she's like, and Sloane's in there, she's like, and I really want my phone, I want to call my daughter. And she's like, I can't let you do that. And then the chapter ends from like Sloane's point of view, and then you get into Athena's point of view, and then you find that like Athena's like he's been poisoning you, like she tells her, I'm an FBI agent. So like, and then after that, once you get that whole part under wraps, you're kind of like, okay, so Sloane's obviously not actually dead, and they fake her death.
Which I thought they were going to do, because they just killed her off like that.
Yeah.
It was like, you're
Yeah.
reading along, she's not doing good, and it's like, we're sorry, she's dead. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? This can't be the end of the book. I'm like, what happened? She's got to still be alive.
Exactly. So it's like,
And
even
so
when she
it
was
wasn't a
dead,
twist.
She wasn't dead. Like
I was like, she can't be really dead.
if she was actually dead, that would have been the twist. If
Yes.
they actually kept her dead, I would have been mind blown.
Yes,
There we go.
that would have been a good twist. Now, what shocked me was that Athena wasn't bad. I really thought she was. I did not think she was an agent until you said, I think she's an agent, and then my mind started going that way. But I think that was the twist that shocked me the most. But again, not that big of a shock.
Yeah, there was the vice president being in on like this whole scheme.
Yes, that was kind of
investigating. That was probably the most shocking.
Yes, and her friend, what's her name? Faye, Senator. She was a senator, Congresswoman, Faye Chambers. She was in on it as well, and she's the one that tried to kill off Rosemary, which surprised me because I would have thought it was Whit.
Yeah,
I would have thought that had been
Whit. They
Whit.
were all in it together.
Yes,
even at the end, it's like they're having a casual conversation about like how basically they had to try to murder them. Like it was like, oh, how was your day? Great weather. Like it was like these people are insane. So yeah, no, it was definitely.
So in a wrap up to this novel, I mean, if you're really looking for a thriller, I wouldn't pick it.
No.
It's probably not a choice. But for me, it's always fun to discuss it because it had a lot to discuss. Sometimes just because you're not going to love every novel that you talk about.
Absolutely, that's so true.
So if you're interested in discussing more about this book, we're going to go to our last slide. And you can join us on Zoom on Tuesday, October 31st at 2 p.m. What you do is you go to collierlibrary.org/events and you can sign up for the virtual book club. And basically you'll join by Zoom and we will talk about this with other people. Because on Goodreads, there were a lot of positive views of this book that liked it.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping one of my people that comes in and Zooms has a different opinion than me and can tell me why I should have read this.
I love it. I love that.
So that's where we're going to leave off. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.